जय भारत। वेलकम टू डेफ टॉक्स क्लिप्स बाय आदि अचिंत। जैसे ही आपने मेरे बड़े चैनल जो डेफ टॉक्स बाय आदि है उसको आपने जिस तरह से सपोर्ट करा, उसी तरह से ये हमारे क्लिप्स के चैनल को, जहां पर आपको छोटे छोटे अपडेट्स, छोटे छोटे शॉर्ट्स और छोटी छोटी कहानियां मिलेंगी, इसी को भी सपोर्ट जरूर कीजिएगा। लाइक का बटन जरूर दबाइए, सब्सक्राइब तो ऑब्वियसली करिए, बेल आइकॉन दबाना बिल्कुल मत भूलिएगा। एंड हाँ जी, प्लीज अपने दोस्तों के साथ, फैमिलीज के साथ ये वीडियोस जरूर शेयर करिएगा। एंजॉय करिए ये क्लिप को। जय हिंद।
I don't think there is anything out here which is unsure. I think it's the time frame of it that is unsure. De-dollarization hoga, but I still do not believe de-dollarization itna jaldi hoga unless you have some cataclysmic event. Comet hits America, or nuclear explosion happens in New York, or civil war happens in America. Even a low-level civil insurgency of the right will not affect the dollar's position for now, because I don't think people realize how powerful the dollar is in spite of the debt. And when you incentivize enough people to keep a debt afloat, when everybody's incentivized in pretending that in not calling in the debt,
they're saying it's good, we should have more.
Yeah. It's insane. And you know how this works, right? I will take $5 billion from the bank. I will pay them back in airy-fairy cash which doesn't exist. It's really ledger transactions happening without anything to back it up. Because the moment you start pegging currency to debt instead of a finite quantity like gold, it works on the principle. But this is where I think people get it wrong. A bank lets out 6 to 7 times the amount it has, under the belief that every investor won't come on the same day and demand their money on the same day.
Yeah.
So it's an accounting exercise how it shows 6, 7 times what its total deposits are that have been lent out.
True.
Now, is there going to be a run on the dollar? That only happens when panic sets in. That is how a run on the bank destroys a bank. Any bank overlends to the tune of 6 to 7 times. Any bank can be brought to heel and destroyed overnight. But why is it that every bank is not destroyed overnight when we know that every bank is doing what that, what was his name? Liam Neeson or whatever, who brought down that bank. वो क्या था? वो क्या सिंगापुर में जो ट्रेडर था ना?
Liam Neeson is an actor.
Trader brought down, let me just Google this. Nick Leeson. Bearings. You remember the Bearings collapse?
Yeah.
So Bearings. Didn't BNP Paribas collapse as well, or RBS also collapse? I don't know how many banks have collapsed.
BNP went right there. The BNP first one went. To get go. Yeah.
So BNP Paribas went. Bearings went. But that doesn't mean every bank is going to go, even though a lot of banks, Hindustani banks ko dekho pehle boss. They all, during the UPA era, people don't realize how much ghotala kiya in logon ne.
ICICI.
Which this government has slowly, without destroying investor confidence, had to fix all those bad debts.
Yep.
And then these idiots say, oh, you're not willing to do it for farmers, but you're willing to do it for rich industrialists. Because the financial system depends on it. Do you know what happens if there's a run on your banks?
Yep.
Nobody gives a jack shit what happens to farmers, because it doesn't lead to a collapse of the financial system. It doesn't even lead to a collapse of the food system.
Hardly
right?
does.
Hardly. Uh, so here's the thing: is it like the UPA? Is the American economy like the UPA bad debt, which will have to be covered up, written off, and dealt with, or it can be the normal system where we all pretend nothing is wrong, or we can do what China did, and people don't realize this, but China essentially recapitalized everything in 2008 after the financial.
And now they're facing for it.
Yeah, but ये 5-10 साल में हो जाएगा, I don't buy this shit.
No. I think 25
Unless
years is what my timeline would be.
25-30 years at least.
That's what.
Even a currency like the pound, where Britain
Yeah.
was completely hammered and smashed after World War II. The franc, which was hammered even more because France was completely under German occupation. Germany, which was completely destroyed, became reserve currencies for a good 40-50 years after that. Of course, the dollar was supreme. People who live in the 80s, before the euro and everything came out, will remember the pound was still very respectable. When I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, the pound was still a reserve currency.
It was
It
actually
was
more respectable than a dollar in certain areas.
a dollar. Yes, it was. So I think uh, it's also it's the same reason. For example, in the West, the adoption in the Middle Ages of Indian numerals was so slow. They didn't trust Indian numerals, even though they could see what it did, and they stuck to Roman numerals because even though you can't do addition, subtraction, multiplication in Roman numerals, I mean, can you imagine how difficult it would have been to do anything with Roman numerals?
Hmm.
But they used to do that with Roman numerals, um, not because this wasn't easier, but because they didn't trust it. So, it's that attitude, gadha hai par mera gadha hai. He's a bastard, but he's my bastard.
Yeah, yeah. I think Jaishankar Saab also put it across very, very nicely and very eloquently about the BRICS and the West. He said we are non-West, but we are not anti-West. That's
Correct.
one. And he said anybody who thinks BRICS is anti-West is misguided.
Yeah.
So जाने से पहले मैं 1 मिनट के लिए आपको रोक लूं, तो प्लीज ये चैनल को लाइक जरूर करिएगा, सब्सक्राइब करिएगा, और हाँ, हमारे जो मेन चैनल को जरूर जरूर अपनी फॉलोशिप दीजिए, ताकि हम आपको अच्छे अच्छे पॉडकास्ट, इंपॉर्टेंट सब्जेक्ट्स एंड जियोपॉलिटिकल अपडेट से आपके सामने प्रेजेंट करते रहें इसी तरह से। थैंक यू सो मच। जय हिंद, जय भारत।